this evening is Mary Rodwell. And Mary Rodwell is the founder and principal of the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, ACERN. ACERN offers professional counseling, support, hypnotherapy, and information to individuals and their families who have anomalous paranormal experiences, particularly abduction contact experiences. Mary is recognized as one of Australia's leading researchers in the UFO and contact phenomenon, and she is also vice president of Star Kids Project Limited Advisory Committee. In addition, Mary is the author of Awakening, How Extraterrestrial Contact Can Transform Your Life, and the producer of the EBE award-winning documentaries Expressions of ET Contact, A Visual Blueprint, and Expressions of ET Contact, A Communication and Healing Blueprint. And her website is www.acern.com.au. And please welcome Mary to the show this evening. Hi, Mary.
Hi, good afternoon from Australia.
Oh, well, good evening and good afternoon to you. And thank you for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here again.
Oh, great. And we have so much to talk about tonight. So what have you been up to as of recent?
Well, one of the most important things I will say is that I'm part of a co-founder of a new organization called FREE, and that's the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And the idea of FREE is that we've collected, as part of FREE now, some amazing people to research this phenomena from a number of levels. And it's a multidisciplinary team. And this team contains astrophysicists. We've got Dr. Edgar Mitchell, for example. We're looking at it from a consciousness perspective. And we're researching this seriously from an academic framework as well. So it's really saying, we're coming out and we're saying this is real. And we're saying that we have now got people with the credentials to, if you like, show the rest of the public and community that this is something that we need to take seriously and understand it.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And I've heard about this team before, actually. And so what exactly are you guys in the process of doing right now? Or have you worked on any documentaries or anything like that? Or are you public speaking?
What we're doing at the moment is we've done our first round of questionnaires, over 500. And those statistics and what we've discovered by those that have filled the questionnaires in is some amazing things to do with transformation through these encounters and whatever. And it's the first time there's been that kind of depth. And we are going into our second round of questionnaires, which will go into even more depth. But what it's doing is giving an overview of the changes and and how people experience this. And it's, the fortunate thing is we've got some wonderful people to look into what these statistics are saying. I mean, we've got a number of professors, academic professors like Dr. John Climo, for example, who's been professor for 40 years. And this is the academic side of FREE. But we've also got, as I say, a science arm, which is 5 physicists to start with. So what we're doing is we're showing from a very tangible scientific and academic perspective the reality of this experience, that it isn't just, the space cadets that have this experience and the myriad of UFO groups that don't always do the best, although they try their best to collate this. This is a chance now to have credible people that can actually help the public understand this reality.
I think that's wonderful. And when you explain tangible, it's hard to put your head around tangible insofar as explaining a contactee's experience. So how do they actually put this into perspective? Is there any type of scientific evidence as well? I know that I'm familiar with implant analysis and things like that. Does that get covered in this whole thing?
It'll be the whole gamut. And
Okay.
the interesting thing, even though it's called extraterrestrial encounters, we are taking everything on board because many of those that have had encounters have had near-death experiences, for example, or out-of-body experiences. Some of them believe they're what's known, the term is walk-ins or hybrids. Some believe it's related to certain types of bloodlines, for example. So what we're hoping to do is to look at all that data without any kind of prejudice. In the way that any scientific organization would do it if it was funded, but we're doing it anyway. We're doing it because we know it's real. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of millions of people out there having experiences. Over 3,000 have contacted me.
Wow.
And I'm just one organization, in Australia. I'm contacted from as far away as Kenya, Uruguay, Poland, Russia, and China. What I'm saying is it's global.
Mm-hmm.
And for many people, they've gone out of their way to contact me, despite the fact they don't, many of them, English is not their second language, but they've needed to find someone who, you know, the information has obviously resonated enough for them to contact me and look at the you know, the questionnaire that I have, which has now been expanded on by a number of researchers into a very much more a scientific format for free, because free is the scientific arm now of this whole phenomena. And I believe it's cutting edge. I believe we're moving into a whole new area, an arena of validating this. And when you say what is the reality, when you've got, you know, this number of people all saying similar things and similar patterns to their experience. And I've, you know, we've got lawyers, doctors, nurses, social workers, therapists, clinicians, you know, of all different kinds, politicians. And we've got people of such huge credentials that are saying, look, this is my experience. But the reality is the children too are speaking about their experiences. And for everyone, you know, when people say, well, what's the reality? Yes, we can go into implants, which are there as well and have been, you know, Dr. Roger Lear was the one that, you know, scientifically looked at a lot of these implants, the scoop marks, the scars, all the marks that people discover. But evidence of a reality is, for me, transformation and changes in the way that we behave. And after experiences like this, people change. They cannot help themselves. And, you know, one of the co-directors, Reynaldo Hernandez, is a lawyer. And he said once that, you know, the mother craft went over his house with his wife and daughter, seeing it, and this energy being that healed his dog, he said, Mary, I was an atheist. You know, I didn't really believe in anything really until this. Now I am totally absorbed. My life has changed forever. Now, you don't have life changes like that unless you've had a real experience, something that is so profound that you can't live your old life again. So when people say, what's the reality? The reality is that if it's changed your life in that way, then it's real, because hallucinations don't do that.
Right. I so agree with you on that one. And also, it sounds like they're just getting their DNA activated through osmosis and frequency through these encounters to some degree. Would that sound about right to you?
Oh, absolutely. I think actually it's human consciousness that's being targeted from a number of these different intelligences. And we all have different experiences that change the way that we look at life and what's important. But it's very profound if you see a huge spacecraft, for example, or you suddenly, you know, wake up in the middle of the night and you're seeing a strange being standing in front of you that you know you are conscious and you're awake and you're seeing. And this is the kinds of experiences people have. And, you know, when the next morning your partner's saying, did you see that thing in our room last night? This is not individual people. This is often whole families that are having experiences together.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Now, is there any kind of government tracking associated with these families who are actually contactees or experiencers? Do you notice anything shadowing them?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you know that as well.
Yeah, I do. I was just curious. Is it a high percentage? I mean, I would say probably.
Oh, look, they have your energy signature. And when there are craft above houses and what have you, the covert governments or, you know, the black ops know. They know who's coming in and coming out, and they know if somebody's having interactions, and they will know even if you've not actually spoken about it. So, you know, but the thing is, as soon as you become more public or you start to talk about it, the black helicopters come, the cars, the intimidation, strange phone calls. But that doesn't happen to everyone. It's usually if someone's poking their nose up just a little bit too high above everybody else and making too much noise, then they do the scare tactics, if you like. So, you know, not everybody gets that, but certainly a percentage do, and it's usually the ones that are a little bit more vocal. This is my experience. Unfortunately, that's all part of the deal.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, it seems to me like everybody's banging the drums right now pretty darn loud insofar as there are so many people being contacted in so many different forms that I don't think they have a choice but to kind of stand down to some degree and just allow this this communication to the highest level to just keep going, you know, when it comes down to extraterrestrial contacts. What do you think about that?
I think that, you know, if you're going to wait for the governments to come out and actually own this, I think we might be waiting a while. Although I'm not definitely ruling it out, but I'm not sure about the US. Maybe China, maybe Russia. They all know it's real. They've all picked up crash craft, etc. And there is a suggestion that maybe one of those other countries might just say, you know, we've had enough now of the truth embargo. But we are actually as free have put out a challenge to society and experiences, and we're having an experience awareness day on October the 1st, which is a badge, which is saying, yeah, I believe in this. It's my experience. And do you know what? I really don't care a stuff what you think, because this is my experience. And this is the movement. We're wanting to create a social movement of people feeling safe enough through that community effort to say, look, this is my experience and this is how it is. Because I think, this is up to us to say, I've had enough of pretending. I've had enough of not saying my truth. Now I'm going to say my truth. And this is what the Experiencer Awareness Day is all about. It's about us standing up and saying, you know what, I know this is real and I don't need anyone to give me permission to say it.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. So that's on October 1st this year.
Yes, right? It is.
Excellent. And so how can people get involved with that? Is it on a website?
Yeah, the free website,
okay.
Experiencer.co. You go on there, and also on my Facebook page, I've got all the links to, what you can do if you are interested in this, and also on ACERN as well. So there'll be information on it as well as in my newsletter.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. This is great. It's like you guys are going full speed ahead. That's excellent to hear. Yeah, I think when you get a bunch of important people together to start really rolling up their sleeves and getting involved, things happen and change for the better. So that's a good thing. And so far as some of these contactees go now, the majority, it seems like with your research and investigations, it has been a positive experience and not necessarily a negative. Would that be about right?
Oh, look, there's a high percentage that actually feel it's been very benevolent to them. Mm-hmm. In fact, they found it harder being on this planet where they say it's still very primitive, because many of them feel connected to these star visitors or whichever name you want to give them, extraterrestrials. But some of them, of course, are interdimensional as well. Mm-hmm. But there are those, it appears to be a lot of different agendas. So, when people say, oh, well, the greys are this or the greys are that, apparently there's at least many, many species. Some say as many as 160 odd species of grey. So what we're seeing is there's agendas that are coming from that species alone. Then there are those that are coming from very humanoid species, for example. There are some called the mantis beings, which are insect-like look beings and beings. There are energy beings. There are reptilian draconian beings, and they've got a mixed press. And then you've got, light beings, energy beings, angelic beings, you name it.
Right.
It seems to be whatever, almost whatever form you can think of. People are often experiencing interactions with 2 or 3 different types of species, for example, but they may connect to the blue beings, for example, as being more in resonance with them, because there's a sense that that's where they're from or their origins. That's an interesting one. But yes, there is trauma, and the trauma can come from two different sources. One is what we know is the military abductions, which are called MyLab, and a lot of people will think that's the ETs, but actually it's not. It is a government thing to actually monitor what's going on, and they have ET technology which can allow them to do this. Mm-hmm. There is a sense that there may be some species working with the military, but there's also many that won't have anything to do with the military. So this is very, very complex, and this is why FREE is important, and an organization that can actually look at this in a way that we can actually start seriously researching this rather than little pockets here, there, and everywhere. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that the UFO groups and some of the more well-known ones are, not doing a good job, but we really have to up the ante if we are to get the public to take notice of this.
I agree. And to me, it seems like not necessarily an epidemic, but I mean, this has been going on for a very long time, and it's been covered up so severely through covert intelligence programs and this and that. So seeing everybody kind of come to fruition insofar as a higher level of consciousness and really opening the door to the new spectrum of extraterrestrial contact, I think is huge, without a doubt. And I agree with you about the contactees and their what they're seeing insofar as perhaps being connected to their quote-unquote what I call celestial heritage. I think that's very big also. And I'm asking you, do you think that it's possible that sometimes these beings would appear in the form that is most comfortable to the contactee?
Absolutely. And it's really to help the human psyche, because despite the fact that you may have this inner knowing and always feeling different, some say, I feel like I've been adopted by my family because I can't connect to them in any way.
Right.
And this is just them connecting to their star heritage and whatever being it is that they personally connect to. It may be a while before they're ready to see the true form of that particular intelligence, because some of them look so completely different to how we are, the crystalline beings, for example, or, some of them are, that people connect to. So, it's like anything. It's like, we're going to let you see something that you can connect with. And when you're ready, we'll show you what we really like, or at least what we look like, so that humans have this habit of judging the book by its cover. We're really good at that. Look at the image thing for everyone at the moment. We've all got to look like, some wonderful model or whatever, which is, of course, a nonsense. So, oh, yes, if we look beautiful, then we've got to be beautiful. Well, that's a nonsense in himself. Mm-hmm. So what they're saying is, you're very discriminatory by the way that you look at people and how you judge them from how they look, because that's not the true essence of who they are. Mm-hmm. So I think we're being taught to tune into the essence rather than the picture, because let's face it, you could have a very self-serving being that looks like an angel, and you could have something that looks really not so pretty that could be the most beautiful, loving being you could imagine. So we've really got to get over, the form and actually start listening and feeling the resonance of that particular energy or being we're communicating with.
Mm-hmm. I very much agree with that also. Yeah. Have you ever had any stories of contactees being healed by these off-world species?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Preston Dennett's written a wonderful book called UFO Healings, and he talks about this some years ago. I think it was in 1996 that book was actually published. Well, I was fascinated because I was getting similar stories where people were saying not only were they having sometimes a serious, almost, terminal illness, where they would remember going up on a craft and the next day being totally well and their doctors being absolutely dumbfounded. But also some people were in accidents where they should have actually died, either drowned or been in a car accident where nobody can actually believe that they got through it and were protected in some way. And that seems to be very much part of this that people don't understand, is that that they are really looked after and protected. If they're important to their particular star family, they've got a role to play. Mm-hmm. They will be looked after. And that is an amazing thing for them to experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really part of that mystery that I really like to touch base on is the healing, and that, the natural healing associated with frequency, and of course what I would suspect is higher consciousness. And what it cues me to is that with this whole military abduction stuff that's going on, and all these interference patterns that they deliberately run to kind of scramble and derail what's going on a bigger spectrum. Why do you think they're doing that? Why do you think they're running interference?
I think it's pretty obvious for anyone that starts to go into this whole field. I can have to tell you, 20 odd years ago, when I was still just doing standard counselling, as I call it, the grief and bereavement and the relationship issues, right. I had no idea what was really going on this planet. Not a clue. I wasn't in love with car salesmen and politicians, I can tell you, because it was pretty obvious they lied through their teeth. I mean, nobody ever, questions that. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't realise was how dark it is, how much is wrong on this planet, and actually, who is pulling the strings. And it certainly isn't our governments. That it's what's behind that. We know the banksters, and we know that there are groups, and we know that those that they call the elite or the Illuminati or whatever, that have all got their own agendas. I didn't realize really how dark that really was in terms of covering up our origins, covering, archaeology, for example. We're only told little bits of what they want us to know about our heritage, our genetic heritage. Everything is being compromised. Everything seems to have had, a layer of disinformation all the way through it. So people don't know the truth. Mm-hmm. And one of the things for me that when my clients came to me and said, Mary, I've found out so much since I've opened up to what is wrong on this planet and what's actually going on, I had to look too. And it wasn't something I particularly wanted to look at, because I like to believe the best and want to believe the best in everyone that I meet, because I prefer to do that. Mm-hmm. But I've had to look at the dark stuff, and you don't have to wallow in it to realize that we've got to change it, mm-hmm. that we are being controlled. We're being controlled through the media. We're being controlled through governments. We're being controlled by the crap food that people eat now, because they don't realize it's full of preservatives and it's making them sick. They don't realize about the chemtrails. They don't realize that, fluoride is actually a neurotoxin. What on earth are you doing, drinking water with it in or having it in your toothpaste? And even with certain things that are supposed to be beneficial now, I have my doubts over, and that includes things like vaccinations. I ask people to look into this. I'm not asking them to believe me, but look into it and look at it objectively, because there is no doubt in my mind that all the, and being sick, the reason we haven't got a cure for cancer is they don't want you to get cured.
Right.
They want you to use as much of their medications and drugs till you finally die, because that makes them more money. If you're cured, they don't make any money out of you. Doesn't this sound cynical? Do I want to be cynical? No, I don't want to be cynical. But it's
reality.
It's, you don't need much of a brain to work this out.
Right.
I don't consider myself, that cluey or that clever even. But once you start looking, you think, well, hold on a minute. I've been fed a whole load of rubbish. And so you have to start again. And for a while you don't want to. In the end, you have to accept it. But when you do, then you can start seeing all of this. And then it's up to you where you go with it. And for me, this is what's happening on the planet worldwide. People are waking up. They are getting it. And thank the Lord they are. Because otherwise, what is there for our grandchildren, our children, our grandchildren? What is the future for them? I would hate to think. So this is where I feel very positive, is that the children, particularly these new ones coming in that I talk about, they are cluey. They know, and these kids know from a number of levels what's happening. So, I think those that are still hanging on by grim death, as I call it, trying still to do their damnedest, are on a loser. And I don't know how fast or how quickly it's all going to happen, but they are just trying their very best, and they're hanging on with the skin of their teeth. But it ain't, to me, the days are numbers. Thank the Lord for that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And it seems to me like they are doing some kind of a mass extermination program. That's what I get anyway, insofar as what's been going on. You were talking about all the toxins and the literal, sabotage that's going on a global scale. We're literally being subjected to biological, technological warfare. You name it, we've got it hitting us in all directions. So yeah, and I also see, that there has to be a solution to this insofar as, okay, everybody's awakened and everybody's catching up, to what's happening on the higher level. But we have to move this out. We've got to get this crap off this planet, or we have to terraform elsewhere. So what is your impression of that?
Well, what is interesting to me, and, everyone will know that you put on the television, you listen to the news, it's a fear program. It's the gloom and doom show, as I call it.
Right.
Now, the reason for that is to create doom and gloom and fear. Everything's the terrorists are going to get you. And if you don't get that, you're going to get cancer. And if you don't get that, something else is going to get you, whatever. You name it, something's going to get you. The baddie's going to get you. So this generates fear. This puts you in the box because you're too scared to go out. You're too scared to travel because the terrorists are going to get you. You're too scared to eat something because you're going to get cancer. You know what I mean? It's self-propagating, and they're playing on the fear. Now, the whole understanding that I have from a more spiritual, metaphysical perspective is this. And a wonderful scientist I'm working with at the moment, and we're looking at the new kids and the new programs, and she says humanity's separating out into two frequencies, what she calls the low frequency people and the high frequency people. And my understanding is that there is a choice in that. And the choice is, do you want to buy into the fear? Do you want fear to dictate your life? Or do you say, no, that's not going to be my future? And I think that when you get to a point where you start looking at how you can empower yourself and you can distance yourself from those old programs and energy and start to really trust yourself and that knowing, you are raising your frequency. When you start looking at all the beautiful stuff that you can do and what can be done, and it's there, it's in front of you if you want to see it. When you raise your frequency, you're no longer a target. You can't be a target because they haven't got a way of controlling those frequencies. So really, to me, this is what it's all about. It's about us now choosing to be in a place where we are actually accessing more of who we are. One of the things the 9-year-old told me, wise, sage 9-year-old said, Mary, human beings are just amazing. The trouble is They don't know how amazing they are. They've got to believe it first. So this is what I'm saying is, some people say, Mary, I've got a feeling I could be so amazing, but I'm almost scared of it. Don't be, because I think we are. I think we've chosen to come to this planet at a crucial point in our evolution. And we've come here because we know what the deal is and we know we can change it. Otherwise, what would be the point?
Right. No, I agree with you on that one. Yeah. And I agree that people need to be calibrated to the higher level of a higher frequency without a doubt. Now, it's been through my own personal experience, and this is just me as a benchmark, and the experience I have with covert technology and the misuse of psychotronic warfare, that I'm very clear that they're able to piggyback off of anybody's electromagnetic field, no matter how high your frequency is. Now, my question to you is do you have any insight on that?
Well, look, I'm still trying to understand, because I know many people are, trapped in certain frequencies through the mind control. And if they've got a handle on you, then it's much harder to break free of it. And I think certainly they are trying to target the higher frequencies. But also I'm hearing what some of the children are telling me, and they're saying, Mary, it really is, a frequency battle. And the frequency battle is something that we've got to understand so that we can help ourselves. Because, ultimately, we must have the tools. We must have those tools, even if we're not sure what they are yet. And the truth is that I believe there is something within us that tells us how to deal with this kind of thing. And with all those psychotronic, if you like, machinations that are going on, we know that they're using a lot of frequencies. They're making people feel ill and sick, suicidal, or even wanting to, I think, manipulate young people to go out and kill people and this kind of thing. I think there is so much that is happening with that. But we are being assisted too with that from these higher levels. Many of them, as long as we've got the intent to transcend that, I think we are assisted by those as well. And many of us, I think, are getting that protection, I think, Solaris. I think some of us do get that once we put out that intent that we want to get past it and we want to help.
Right, I believe that too. And also it's shining the light in these areas that are basically what I call weaponization tactics. And it's one thing, I totally resonate with what you're saying. And for me, and if there's any way I can bring this to the attention of your group, literally we have to flush out this technological war game that's going on. We have to shine the light on the misuse of this technology because it's huge. It's huge. And this is one of the things I've been on the front lines with insofar as the way they're using and deploying these array systems. These array systems need to be shut down and switched off. They're a global disease and an epidemic. And I'm just bringing this to your attention because what you all are doing, it dovetails into the potential misuse of these weapon systems against all star beings. And even if they're fortified and fully harmonic, I want people to be aware, because when you're aware, you have the tools to take down and disable things that are potentially dangerous.
I think you're absolutely spot on. And what people need to understand is there is so many levels to this whole psychotronic warfare. And being aware and being knowledgeable, then you can start looking at ways to actually help yourself and help those around you. It's really, really important. But I also do believe that we have the ability to transcend all of that. Be aware of it, but don't be pulled into it. Don't get sunk into it.
Right.
Don't get sunk into the, that morass of fear where, what's the point then? I think there's a very good point, and the only reason that we've incarnated is because we know we can deal with it. We wouldn't incarnate otherwise. What's the point of, saying, okay, I'm going to be born on that planet, but it's going to be a waste of time because we're not going to be able to manage to do anything because of what's going on there. I think we have the ability, but this is about us starting to access that part of us that is not from here, that part of us that is tapping into our super conscious aspect that knows we've come here, and we've come here with something to do, a task, and we can, we've got to start trusting that knowing, because I think in the end that's what it is. It's about us accessing, okay, how do I deal with this now?
Absolutely. Well said, I must say. Yeah, and free will is honored, even though it doesn't seem like they're doing it on this linear world and the illusion of. But the nice thing of what you're communicating, yes, we have a choice to incarnate on this planet, but it's not forced incarnation. We choose to incarnate here. Is that what you're pretty much telling or communicating?
Well, everything that I understand with my work with past lives, in between lives, with those that I've spoken to, And children, of course, many of them remember their past lives anyway. They'll say, my other origin is Arcturus, or my other origin is the Pleiades, or my other origin is through a portal in the sun, or whatever. They are quite conscious of their previous lifetimes and where they're from and what they've come here to do and what have you. I'm saying yes. I mean, it really now what they're saying is, even though some of them have had a really awful time. Some of the adults have gone through some terrible experiences with MyLab, with super soldier programs, for example, and this kind of thing. And when they've accessed that part of themselves about why, many of them have said, I experienced that so I would understand it so that I can actually do something about it. So to them, it was a way of being, if you like, an insider to work out just how it's done so that then they can do something about exposing it. And this is what many of them have said that was the reason why they chose that particular challenge or that particular Earth mission.
Right, that makes perfect sense. Well, I know we choose our divine ascension blueprint, so they map it out before they enter onto the Earth, supposedly. Yes. And I do believe that for sure. And what do you think sparked this mass incarnation of the Star Children in general? When do you think it started? What year?
Look, I think it's been coming in probably in the last 100 years or so, but my sense is that it accelerated as soon as we had technologies that were damaging not only ourselves, but the other dimensional, the realities, if you like, because they're saying that, nuclear, when we detonate a nuclear warhead, we are upsetting other dimensions, not just our own reality in our own, third dimensional world. And when that happens, then it's almost like, the way I describe it is you give a 3-year-old a loaded gun. Now, a 3-year-old hasn't got a clue that can kill people. And I think that we've been, the 3-year-old with a loaded gun. And now that those other higher intelligences and star families are saying, we have to, get them to grow up fast. And so the only way to do that is they've been working with each generation with an upgrade to get to a point where we understand more of our multidimensional world so that we can actually operate that with maturity and not like with little kids that are still playing with something we don't understand.
Right, exactly. And a lot of that has to do with, in my opinion, deprogramming on a linear scale of all the false databases of information that has been, quote unquote, taught to people throughout centuries. So it's literally about re-educating everybody on a higher level, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And this is where I think, the new children are coming in. And one young lady told me the Homo noeticus came in the year of the 2000, and they're being born without programs. But also the ones that have new programs, and we call them dysfunctional. And this is very much part of my research now, and I'm working with a scientist in Sweden with this. And she calls herself a letter person. This incorporates such so-called dysfunctions, and we call them dysfunctions because we can't program them into the old paradigm, and that's ones like Asperger's, ADHD, some types of autism, dyslexia, and very possibly bipolar. I mean, I'm bringing in a lot of new programs in the sense of putting them in that box because all of them are harder to program. And that is the major focus here. And what she's saying is, that is deliberate. It means part of their DNA has more different parts of the genome switched on. They don't operate in the same reality because many of them are experiencing a broader spectrum of reality. So she said even with herself, she's discovered more nerve endings, for example, under her skin. She has found, for example, that they use, because they're operating a lot faster, like the ADHD, for example, operating much faster, they need certain more of different minerals and vitamins, for example, to help them manage living on a planet like this.
Right.
And what we're doing is we're dumbing them down. We're slowing them up to accept our reality, when in fact that's part of the reason many of them struggle and get very upset and get so angry, is because that's not their reality. Their reality is they are experiencing so much more, and that's where they want to be. They don't want to be in this slow pedestrian kind of reality that we're living in, where everything's slowed down. But we are trying to force them into it, and this is why I think ultimately my feeling is we're going to have a look at a whole new way of educating these children,
right.
a completely different way, because the exponential increase of all these new programs is going to force us to do it. We ain't going to have a choice.
Right, I totally agree with you. So let me ask you this: with all the technology that we have and the transhumanism, which is kind of shadowing across the globe here, do you think that the part of the education system in the future could be the possibility of artificial intelligence interface with these children?
I think that's anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with all of that, we really need to realize that actually we don't need the technology.
Right.
That we have the ability through consciousness to do everything that technology is showing us.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Absolutely.
And this is where I think that we're headed. I think there's going to come a point where we are going to be switched on. And then it's all going to be there, from interfacing mind to mind, which a lot of the children are doing anyway at the moment. They're a lot of them are telepathic, and this is why I'm saying to adults, be careful of your thoughts, because these kids tune into them. They will know what you're thinking. If you're angry, they'll become angry. They also sense emotions and feelings of other people and what's going on with them. So this is another part of what we need to understand, is that I think anything that the new technologies can show us, I think we are capable of doing without the technology.
I so agree with you, and I can get into my own personal experience with artificial intelligence and synthetic telepathy. I'll tell you point blank, yeah, natural telepathy, much better. Artificial intelligence, too much programming. So yeah, exactly. And I love what you're communicating, because you're right on track with higher consciousness and what I call the full light universe, and of course what we call planetary and universal ascension, which I'm a firm believer in. As everything starts to ascend, we see all these drama bubbles, and it seems to me like it's all happening in sequence. Even though it seems kind of uncomfortable sometimes, it looks like we are going full speed ahead on a higher level of consciousness. And my question is, with these children, do they have specific diets? Have you noticed the star children needing a certain specific diet, maybe more vegan, or is there anything that cues you to maybe it's more light body oriented?
Very much so. And I think that's where we're headed as a species too, to understand our nutrition is going to change. Many more want the liquid type diets, for example.
Right.
And, the sad thing with those that, what we don't realize is when we eat certain meats, if that animal has died in fear and pain, for example, that is the energy, you're going to pick up. This is what we need to understand, is we need to understand if we are going to, have animal proteins, we have to treat these animals with respect, just as the indigenous peoples understand that there is a trade in energy and if you like, an agreement with that animal consciousness. It's about treating everything with the respect that we would like to be treated with, that we are part of it all and we're part of one another. So, this is about us really growing up and realizing how everything we do impacts on those around us. And, this is really forcing us, if we want to grow in that way, to really connect to everyone in a way that we understand they're part of us. This is the ultimate understanding. When I've worked with people in hypnosis, and sometimes they get the gift of going into a space where they feel they are part of the universe, this kind of sense of unity consciousness. And they say, it's like, I don't need anything. I'm aware of everything. And I just want to be here because I know I'm connected to everything. And I remember one lady when I said, well, you've got about 3 pages of questions here. Can I get started on these? Because I thought it's going to take me half a day to get through them. And she said, they're all immaterial. They're no longer important. That wow. She felt she had connected and understood everything she needed to know. And so all these questions from her conscious mind were irrelevant.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really incredible. And I know you've had some powerful sessions with some people. Now, do you ever offer holographic repatterning, or are you familiar with it?
I know a little bit about it. My way of working, and I think we all have our own way of working with healing, with we've got our own skills, and we probably bring that from where our origins are, because we're all bringing different skills, some for the planet, some for the plants, some for the animals or whatever. I work with what I think is the mind consciousness. And for me, I believe the superconscious really is the one directing the game. So for me to connect with the superconscious of the individual from whatever level the superconscious allows is so there's a dialogue going on. What does this person most need to understand right now? So that's where we get all the answers to the questions that somebody may come to me with and say, I want to know about this. I want to know about that. What do I need to understand? And then I say, we're talking to the superconscious. Now, superconscious, can you give us what this person, who is you're an aspect of, is what can you say to them that they most need to know at this moment in time? And it may not be, and it certainly won't be the whole gamut, because we can only take so much of that kind of information as we make our way through life, because it's still got to have the mystery. It's still got to have the adventure. It's still got to have the curiosity. If we had it all dumped down all in one go, then there would be no point in living this virtual reality, would there? We've got to have a bit of fun in here and a bit of an adventure, because if we got it all in one go. So really it's about me facilitating their access to their superconscious, however is comfortable for them. And that's what I really enjoy doing. I really enjoy, being a facilitator for that. And when they see how it works, then they can continue with that key, with those tools.
Well, I think you're awesome, Mary. I just love you, I must say. You're wonderful. I'm so appreciative of what you're doing here on this world. So thank you for showing up on the timeline.
Oh, it looked as though it wasn't going to be boring, you see, because I'm terrible. If things look boring, I don't want to do them. So I've said to whoever is my non-physical family, as long as you keep it interesting, I'll hang around. But as soon as it gets boring, you can take me off the planet. So that's the deal.
That's great. That's awesome. Now, you called it a virtual reality, which I thought was interesting. I see the world as holographic and our universe as holographic. And what is your impression of that?
Oh, I just think we've created a wonderful video game for ourselves, right. Really.
Yeah, exactly. We manifest it, Will.
That's what I believe today anyway. It's like, okay, how can I make it interesting? We'll bring a bit of that, because I knew I wasn't going to be happy with vacuuming and pruning roses. I always knew that. So it had to be interesting. So I've created a really interesting scenario for myself, Right. But I'm not saying I necessarily do that, just as an aspect of my soul self. I believe as soul groupings, we're assisting each other by these virtual realities to learn and to grow and to experience in a more dense environment, so that we can have an interesting and challenging adventure.
Right, exactly. It's always a reminder, too. We're almost like reflections to each other, reminders of our divinity on a higher level of consciousness, which I like. And of course, to me, it's like our presence alone, star people in general, are affecting the hologram. So even in one incarnation is changing the dynamic of an old pattern, perhaps.
Oh, I think people, say, well, we can't all do maybe as much as others, and we can't all be, the Mother Teresas or whatever. And I'm saying, when you're walking down the street and there's somebody walking by that looks a bit sad, if you can just raise a smile on that face of that other person, you've changed things. And that's all you need to do. And if you've done that just once a day, you're making a difference. And so, we don't all have to be the movers and the shakers in the big way at all. We just have to be just really thoughtful and caring about, these others on this journey.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And a lot are lost and disconnected from source, really don't know what's going on. So I think that it's very important to do what you were talking about. Now, I mentioned David Dunger. Of course, he's going to be on. He's the host of Shiny Side Out with Mecki coming up next after us. And, of course, he was talking about the star children starting another Earth. And I'd like to discuss that a little bit and your take on that whole thing.
Well, what I found really interesting and why I love the kids, and I've said this many times, is they don't watch talk shows and they don't read books. What they're coming out with has an integrity and a purity and a clarity that those that are older, I don't believe, have because of programming and education and all the other stuff that they're exposed to. Mm-hmm. Now, a number of children, and I'm talking about 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, have talked about the new Earth. And when you get children from other parts all over the globe, I've got, one talking about this in England, one in Hungary, another one in Turkey, and one in Sydney, all talking about the new Earth. And they all have a slightly different take on it. The one in Turkey said to him, drew this picture of a script and a planet. And her mother said, well, what is this? What because the script looked very much like the star script that, many of those with experiences do. And then this planet, and she said, what's this planet? And she said, that's the new Earth. And her mother said, well, can you tell me more about the new Earth? And she said, no, it's a secret. And then we got someone else, another young, I think 5 or 6 year old, saying to their parent that, about the new Earth and where was it? And this young lady said, I can't tell you yet, because you wouldn't know it if I told you. Then you get a 3.5 year old talking about the new Earth. Now, when you get children talking about the new Earth in this way, you have to say, what is it that they know? What is that saying? From an adult point of view, what does it mean? Does it mean some people, and certainly the children, one young 7-year-old did a lovely little clip for me where she describes being taken to the new Earth with the pinky teas, as she called them. And she does it very beautifully in a kind of container that is almost, she described it almost like being surrounded in a certain way to be taken there. And she said, learning all the magic things like telepathy and all those, because she called them magic things. And she said, and then we're coming back and we're going to sort this lot out. So her understanding was that there was going to be this shift to learning all of these things and then coming back and sorting out planet Earth. Others believe it's a dimensional kind of shift where some of the lower frequencies will stay in third dimension and the ones that wish to will move into the fourth dimension. And when I talked to a 16-year-old about this, he said, Mary, it's already here, but we don't see it yet.
Right. That makes sense.
So you can see what resonates with you.
Well, coming from, I taught ascension and DNA activation. So when we talk about New Earth Star and New Earth consciousness, I'm well aware that children like that probably technically shouldn't know the language unless they've either come from there. You know what I mean? And when you're talking about this New Earth Star, I'm wondering if that's their birthplace and they incarnate temporarily on here and then ascend back over. But I do believe it's frequency and it's cloaked through frequency as well.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me. And there is one other thing. I even spoke to a lady a few days ago who'd been really concerned because last year she'd been given this information in her contacts about a huge shift or a huge change. And she was desperate to tell someone. So she came specially quite a distance to tell me. And what I was able to say to her and what I'm able to say to your listeners is this. I'm getting a similar story from so many people that they're aware that something is ahead, something that is, and whether it's a shift in consciousness or whether it's combined with something that is planetary, I can't tell you. I only know that for some it's in a sense of anticipation, not fear at all. And for others it's like, it's going to be difficult for a while, but then it's going to be great. So there's this whole, and again, these are different people with a different sense of what this means. But the whole overriding thing is that the next few years are crucial.
Right.
And we're talking about from 2015 to 2017. And this 9-year-old that I spoke to about a year, 18 months ago now, said, Mary, this important time was 2012 to 2017. And this is the 9-year-old giving me those dates.
Wow.
So you can make of it what you will. But I look at if enough people are telling me a similar kind of thing, then I feel there's some credibility to that. But people must see how that resonates with them.
Exactly. And of course, like I said, if those of us who are already on track with ascension and understand the language of ascension, like I'm sure you might be familiar with this concept, which isn't a concept, but literally they talk about a universal split where there's a full light consciousness, full light universe, and a full light, and an orotronic universe. There's two different splits that happen, and one goes in one direction, the other goes in the other. And the full light universe is for those who ascended in consciousness, who are actually up to speed in vibration and frequency. The orotronic is an incomplete universe where those who have not ascended in frequency can continue on in their path. Have you heard of that before?
Yes, it fits very much in with my understanding. To me, what I try and do is speak a very everyday language to everyone,
right?
So that because not everybody understands the more metaphysical terms or whatever. So for me, I keep it really simple. It's the background of a nurse midwife, I think.
I love it. No, it's great. You're still speaking my language.